Hello, everyone, and welcome to our interview series here called Pivot. We love to spend a good amount of time talking with individuals inside and outside our vegan community that have learned how to make changes in their business, in their environment, and in their organizations. One of the things that we believe is one of the most challenging parts of being a business owner is being able to adapt to the environment that's around you, being able to make, as they say, lemonade when you've been served lemons. And this year, when we think about 2020, a lot of us have had maybe a surplus of lemons this year. And the idea is I love to bring examples of people who have found a way forward and maybe help them maybe have them help you by providing not only some of their experience, but what they have learned. So I'm excited for our guest today. Eugenia is going to be here talking about her pivot story, her transition story, and specifically about transitioning, the support that she does as far as people transitioning to a plant-based diet, but how she did it in this digital space, going from, maybe a planned process of doing a lot of this work in person to transitioning it to an online space, and how Eugenia has made it work, how she's grown it over time, and also potentially tapping into what her future plans are as we look at 2021. So welcome, Eugenia. I'm so glad to have you here today with us.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. So let's do a little bit of background. As anyone is joining today and they're thinking about their business, thinking about things like helping people transition, go plant-based, this is a big thing for many of us because we see the world seems to want to embrace some of these dietary changes, really embrace the idea of maybe transitioning their lifestyle. So there seems to be a demand for it, but there's a little bit of different perspective on, learning online as opposed to in person. So I'd love for us to spend a little bit of time and hear about your experience with that. But before we dive in, maybe let's give everyone a little bit of background. Let's explain, how long you've been vegan and, what's been your journey to now, especially professionally, what got you to where you are today?
Sure. So my journey started when I moved to New York to go to Columbia for nursing school. I went to become a family nurse practitioner. After the first year, I did the program where I got a second bachelor's BSN in 1 year. So it's 2 years of school in one. So it's really crazy. All of us had awful food habits. Even if you exercise, just impossible to out exercise a bad diet. And by the end of the year, I was feeling so awful that I had tried a couple little diets, looked into various stuff. And 1 week, I think it was after I was for several weeks eating a lot of meat. It wasn't necessarily keto, but I was just eating a lot of meat. I don't know why. And I just went grocery shopping and I was repulsed by any animal products. And that's really good for me because I love steak, I love cheese, like those are my favorite foods before. And so I happened to only get that. And I ate the whole week and I didn't starve. I kind of figured out stuff to eat. I felt really good. And I started, and honestly, that was what made me look it up. I don't think I even knew the word vegan. I just started looking like, do you need meat? Do you need cheese? And the research just kept piling in. And I discovered all these documentaries and books, and the China study book was really what just nailed my scientific brain in. And then while I finished my schooling in Columbia, so the next 2 years, I was shocked. We never talked about nutrition. We never talked about preventative lifestyle changes. It was like maybe 15 minutes, and the entire 2-year program was, okay, what's the first line for anything? Hypertension, diabetes, cancer, it's lifestyle changes. But then it was always, okay, 3 to 6 months of lifestyle changes. And now let's dive into what you're really going to be doing, which is prescribing medications and adjusting them and doing labs. And that was just really frustrating. So I, graduated, I learned what I needed to learn, and I started practicing, and I still practice in the same place to this day. This will be my 4th year in the Bronx. And it is very difficult. It's like the hardest job I'll probably ever have in primary care. It's They're the least healthy county in all of New York State. We have high everything from like transmissible diseases to preventable diseases from lifestyle. So a lot of people could benefit from preventative nutrition. So within just a few months of just making sure I understood just the basics with medication and was comfortable with that, I started approaching every single client about lifestyle changes. Like I would portion my time so that most of the time was spent talking about lifestyle. And I only had 15, 20 minutes a patient. So I got really good at it.
Getting it in there, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's get the foundations down. These are the foods you need more of. These are the foods you need less of. I used I think it's McDougall. He has a green light, red light, yellow light system. I was like, okay, you want your yeses and nos? Here are your yeses and nos. And in 2018, towards the end of 2019, I was, all of 2019, I was trying to convince our chief medical officer to start a comprehensive nutrition program because we had one nutritionist. We still have one nutritionist, and we have 5 primary care sites. Thousands and thousands of people come through we are their primary care providers. And yet we have one nutritionist who will probably see you once a month for 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And then you don't see them for a whole nother month. And there's no real like system in place. It's just generally like you see one-on-one. It's not a very sustainable way to change. None of us would really, unless you somehow got some revolutionary aha moment from one visit.
One session,
Yeah, that's not really.
It's very difficult to change, with that much.
So I basically, I mean, your audience wants to know how to overcome challenges. My first challenge was even like starting it. I was not trying to hide that I was promoting plant-based. Every clinician at my organization knows that I am vegan. I try to use the word plant-based to try and make it not so
softer on delivery. I understand that. Yeah. In the environment that you're in. But we knew where you were going.
Say that again?
So, but we know where you were going. We were going to vegan. Yes.
And so over the course of a year, I kind of wore down my CMO. I basically was like, you don't want to let me hire anyone? I'll do everything. There's no overhead costs. It's just, you need to give me time. Your overhead cost is my salary that you're letting me take hours to create this program. And then him and other providers, their issue was who's going to want to eat plant-based in our community. People don't have enough food to eat. They don't have enough money to buy food at the end of the month sometimes. Their cultural food is really meat heavy and cheese heavy. You're going to be offending them. All of these reasons, when I did the research online and looked at research studies disprove that over and over again, that it doesn't matter your cultural background. There's vegetables and fruits and whole grains are still part of that. And you don't have to, and the point of, you don't have to tell people you have to exclude things. You can just minimize. So you never have to really even say, there's a food that's totally off the menu forever. It's their choice if they decide to. So anyway, long story short, to get to the, what things I adjusted during COVID, but I got a yes. And then I applied for a grant to fund in-person cooking classes, because I was trying to find a way to do this to engage people, and I couldn't quite think of a free way, because just getting people to come into the clinic. So I did actually get my own funds, small amount, from Veg Fund, which was amazing, and they're amazing, and everyone should, who has any ideas about how to spread the plant-based message, should absolutely apply to Veg Fund. I didn't even know other clinicians even got funding through them. I just thought, I know I want to do this. I totally promote their mission. And so they were the ones who first believed in me and gave me the funds to do this. So we started out, so the program was, just like you implied in the beginning, entirely in-person classes. My whole draw was, I will give everyone a sample of a plant-based meal during the class. It wasn't always going to be a cooking class, but no matter what, everyone would get a bite of, like, banana blueberry oatmeal, or 3-bean chili, or like anything. And I had
You're going to win them over with flavor and taste and texture.
Because when I tell people what they need to eat, their first thought is, oh, I'm going to be eating bland food for the rest of my life. Or oh, you want to cut out oil and sugar? Like, this isn't going to be good anymore. I don't eat rice without oil, you know? And so I really wanted to just break those misconceptions. And it was going all right for the first, January 2020, February 2020. The numbers weren't as high as I wanted, but I knew it was the beginning. And we were only getting, the max I had in a group was 7. Okay. So, and the room really could only fit 10. So I was almost at my max anyway. Okay. And then COVID hit, and we had to actually totally stop because I was pulled to be working in a nursing home. We have a really large portfolio in my network, and we have a nursing home with, really a high risk patients of COVID. There was a COVID outbreak, absolutely, as in pretty much every nursing home in at least New York. And so I worked there for 4 months. So that was pretty crazy. It was like pivot, stop. And then when I was able to return back, I returned back in June. I had my day and a half of preparing for this program, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I racked my brain. Zoom. We all had access to Zoom because we were doing telehealth through Zoom. And so, Zoom was the natural next step. Now it was, do you want me to keep going? Because this is like the full story.
No, the story's good. The story's good. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, we haven't even hit the challenges yet. So Zoom, okay. So our patients had only started, not everyone had even been seen by our clinic yet. So post-COVID, a lot of people stayed home. A lot of people just didn't go in at all. And we were in the middle of trying to figure out how to help our low technology, difficult to even call to confirm an appointment population. They change their numbers all the time. I don't know. There's a million reasons why, but we even have patients who just literally every month that they come in, they have a different phone number. So it was really hard to even track our patients down and get them to not just physically come in to do a virtual appointment, let alone log on when we were on. So now I had to get multiple people at the same time on a call to watch a video. And that was, I didn't even know. So I recruited one other staff member, a medical assistant, who ended up having to leave for family medical reasons. And so I was basically on my own after the first 2 months, but she and we called every patient, and we would say, okay.
That sounds like a lot of work to call each and every patient.
But I didn't know what else to do. And so we called every patient, and, we would get 1 yes out of every 10 calls. And then we would feel good when we had, like, let's say 10 confirmed, and then the call would happen, and I would even have her call them all an hour before, and 2 people would show up.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, like all that work, all those hours of calling people promising they're going to be there, people who even are like, when you're like someone's primary care provider, they feel, there's just like a level of gratitude that I feel from people that I don't need, but like that's just comfort people. If you help them and you tell them I'm doing this project, they want to like be there for you. They feel like they're supporting you. So, I know that they genuinely wanted to be there, but for one reason or another, they weren't showing
Something
up.
came up.
So
how did you overcome that hurdle?
Yeah.
Like, is it just time? Eventually the word getting out, people getting excited about it, or how did you overcome that and be able to increase your attendance?
2.5 months, nothing improving. So I was just racking my brain. I swear, I was thinking about it first thing in the morning. I was thinking about it when I was going to bed. I was thinking about, like, what do I do? So I asked them, of course, that's the first thing you do. You ask your audience, what can I do? What can I do easier? And I kept hearing, I just forget about it. Like, oh, we talked to you, like, even if I talked to them 2 days before, but I was never telling them more than like 4 days in advance, they would forget about it. They'd be like, oh, something came up with the kids, I know you called me in the morning, but that I forgot by the time it was happening. So it was like, well, it's literally impossible for me to call everyone 10 minutes before the call starts. And then I was thinking, okay, maybe I can text them. If they're able to hop on Zoom, they're probably text capable. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and try texting them. Text everyone from your phone, even though you copy and paste it. Oh my gosh, such hard work too. And you have to type in each number because you're having different numbers. Oh my gosh. So I did that. I think I did that manually maybe 2 or 3 times before thinking like, oh my God, there's got to be like some free thing I can do. So there wasn't anything free
Okay.
to text people in groups. And I had come to the point where I needed to renew my veg fund. By the way, they had approved virtual classes, and I was doing cooking classes using the funds over the camera. And so since a lot of the budget was decreased because we weren't having in-person classes, what I asked to fund instead is this text message campaign. And the system I was using is Text Magic. They have like a really good laws to protect numbers that you put in. Obviously, it would be a really big HIPAA issue if I had patients that I brought from my clinic through the system and then they got spammed.
Yeah.
So I use this, it's a 6 cents every outgoing text, every ingoing text was free, which actually adds up. But so I applied with Veg Fund and they approved it. So that was amazing. I really like gave them all the data and everything.
That's good.
Yeah. And it worked. I had to kind of figure out how often to text. And I found the happy medium is like an obnoxious amount, which I have a dentist appointment tomorrow and I realized they do the same thing. So I text them on Tuesdays for the Friday class, and then I will send them a reminder the night before, and then I will text them the morning of, and then 10 minutes before I will say it's starting.
Yes.
And that gets me a 50% attendance rate from people who said yes.
Isn't that crazy? Like that
crazy
amount of communication that's needed to even get you to 50%. And I stop you there only because I think we all assume like if we send out an email, they're going to come. Or like you said, if we're going to call them, they're going to show up. And I think a lot of times business owners don't realize that there's always a fall off, and often you have to work at a certain level to even get to 50%.
Yeah.
So those numbers are really important, I think, for people who are watching and listening to understand that's what it takes. Because even if you look at like email marketing, only 35% of the people are going to even open your emails. So things like that, understanding your numbers, I always think it's such a big deal. And starting to do your marketing to tweak those numbers, because then you can go from 10% show up to 50% show up, just like you did.
Yeah. And now we're getting, so just to see how quickly it grew from, let's say, I think by August, I was getting like 40-50% show rate. And by the way, I will text about 100 new people who are, and we only focus on people who are highly need it. So people who are morbidly obese or uncontrolled diabetic. Those are the two like main populations that we target, and as well as pre-diabetic or diabetic children, or overweight or obese children. I don't try to make them reach a bad category for their parents to attend. But so I actually text out 100 to 200 new people every week. And out of those people, the 50% attendance rate is people who've already said yes at any time. Out of those people, I probably get an extra 4 or 5 yeses out of 100.
Yes.
So it took many weeks to like go through these 100 and be like 100. I'll email them 3 different times. If they don't respond, they're off my list. I start with a new 100. So that slowly built up my list. Of course, this is hard if you don't already have 10,000 type 2 diabetics and morbidly obese patients to reach. But I'm trying to help my entire organization. That's why I have this. But we now have between 20 and 25 attendees, which is amazing. In 1 hour. But that took September, October, November. By November, we were reaching it. So that took about 3 months to quadruple it. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And I love that. It takes, I'm such a believer in it takes time to get to that steady number. And also it takes time to get to that rhythm. Like you were saying, okay, to get my new people, I have to go through this list of 100, text message them 3 times, then go into a new list. So I love that you kind of approach this a little more scientifically.
Yes.
A little bit more with the
numbers focused. Yes.
Yeah, I think that really makes a difference. So walk me through, and you're having classes every single week? Or how often are you having classes? Okay.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. I don't know. I started doing that pretty early on because I watched what other organizations were doing, and the ones with consistent consistent dates and times every week were much more likely. That was generally what people did. They didn't just have a website that they listed like when the next one was, and it was kind of all over the place. So I just picked, okay, Fridays are the days that I have been given by the organization to do classes, and what time are most people available? Lunchtime. So I just picked 12 to 1 on Fridays, and I just kept it at that. I did in the beginning try different times and days, and my biggest attendance was 5 p.m. on a Friday. I get why, but my front desk hates that, because then I text them all these people to check in at 5 p.m. and then the billers are annoyed that I don't have everything done until, so in a clinical setting, not ideal for a 9-to-5 business that's not open on the weekends to do that. But I would say if you are flexible, then do it during when people are not working. But yeah, I definitely chose the same time, and I'm replicating that with Spanish classes. So I'm always trying to further broadcast the message, and I'm always like entrepreneurial spirit, thinking about things. And so just so you know, I don't feel like I've made it. Like I've reached my goal, my minimum goal, which was 20 to 25 people. Because that's how many people they would expect me to see in a day. And so if I'm doing that in 1 hour with my nutrition class, then they can warrant me not just seeing regular patients, because it's the bottom line, is very important for a business. And while I am more worried about outcomes, I also need to, we need to
meet everyone's needs. Yeah. So how has it been internally? Like, now that you've had these results, you've had this data, and you've taken it internal, what kind of response did you get?
I'm getting more attention, and I am getting access to people in the organization that didn't even know existed. I didn't know we had a media person. I didn't know any of the people who did data at my organization. So now I am kind of buckling down on the data. So we're going to have a page on our website now to refer people. And it'll be very similar to Bellevue's program also. They were actually one of the programs that I pitched to my CMO to say, this program's in need. It's the only other similar program. It's in Manhattan. We're in the Bronx. And then we are going to collect data on all patients that have attended through this data system that we have, and we'll track outcomes so that we'll be able to demonstrate that to other grants, to internally, to show providers if they refer to us, here are actual data of actual patients. And then we're starting Spanish classes. So there's another nurse practitioner that works with us, and she has expressed a lot of interest about learning about nutrition. Again, we don't learn it in schools. MDs don't either. And so I've been kind of answering questions as I go, sending her my resources, nutritionfacts.org, PCRM, all my favorite resources that all of us know. And love. And love, and are so grateful for, and couldn't know all this information without. And she was telling me, I just had the thought, she's Spanish speaking, and she was telling me that she wanted to even read How Not to Die in Spanish, so she would know the words in Spanish. And I said, well, you know what? It would be really great if you actually taught patients in Spanish. You could do exactly what I'm doing. I speak very limited Spanish. I can get through a basic interview, but I cannot tell someone how to cook like chickpea masala in Spanish. That's just not my level. And so she was really excited. And and so I think the more people you can bring in your organization that want to contribute, the greater the excitement spreads, and your impact is greater, because like you might have these skills that have gotten you this far and that are the reason that this program even exists. But to get to the next level, you need other expertise, other ideas that you may not even possibly imagine that you need. So I am sure that she's going to have some ideas for the program that I've never even thought of, that I may not even think works, but we're going to try, because she's another person that can bring their own special gifts and skills. So
I love that. And I think that's the key of like building something great or building something that's impactful, is a lot of times it may take one person like yourself to really push it forward and get it to a point that people take notice, that people really pay attention and create that process, and then being willing to kind of share that glory with others so that you can make it even bigger, so that you could maybe do offer it at, for multiple facilities, to be able to make it kind of into the dream opportunity where, you may have 4 or 5 classes in a week eventually, or even something
Right.
one day. And the idea is that bringing other people in, collaborating, and then being able to offer them classes, Spanish speaking classes, I think is brilliant. So I'm glad that you're not only finding a way to make this happen, but finding a way to continue to expand it, especially in this environment, which has been a little bit difficult and challenging for a lot of people. So I guess one thing I would love to do as we kind of wrap up our time today is any advice that you have for people, because I feel like what you did is you kind of took that entrepreneurial mindset and brought it into this role. Not necessarily this is like your small business kind of feel, because it's, a piece of pulling out the work that you already do. But anything that you would recommend to anyone out there that's trying to get a project like this off the ground, whether it is cooking classes or whether it is another type of project or idea, that resilience that you had and patience that you had to push through. Any recommendations that you have for anyone out there that is trying to start anew during this time?
I mean, the things that come to mind seem so obvious to me, but I guess I'm just a testament that it works. Is that if your project's existence depends on somebody's permission, then find out what they are motivated by and what their goals are. Whether it's increasing the bottom line, or if it's so my leader is actually fits into the demographic of the types, like his background is from the demographics of patients that we treat. And so for him, learning about the health outcomes of the health benefits was actually a pro for him. So showing that patients from low income, I wouldn't say housing, but it's not low income, but people who are low income can still benefit hugely from plant-based diets, and it's not more expensive. And I gave him even journals that I just brought him for him to take home and look over. And I know him and his wife looked at them because his wife is really into that stuff too. So just finding a way to connect with the exact person that you want to connect with is worth it. Mm-hmm. And then obviously and then the second thing for me that was definitely, and I think this is going to be for everyone, is making sure that your program doesn't lose money, because the bottom line is, if you make your patients healthier, they're ideally not returning back to you, right? So you don't want to sell that point, but you do want to sell that on the way there, you'll be helping the patients will be coming in more often, and then you'll be getting more referrals from outside of the organization. That's like a very personal to my program, but sorry, I feel like I explained that really scattered.
No, I think I know what you meant. It's not that it's aligning the goals, meaning you want to get people healthy, you want to get them good outcomes, but at the same time, the organization wants to stay afloat. So the question is, how do you get those goals to come together? So if you are helping people, if you can create enough referrals, then that creates a common goal between the two. They're not fighting against each other, because if they're fighting against each other, it's hard for this program to continue.
Right. And then the more people you can get on board, the better. So if you somehow, I know we're not getting in the room with too many people, but every time I was in the room with anyone who remotely could possibly understand anything about the program, I would tell them about it. So anyone that I've seen in the last 2 years at my clinic knows that I'm plant-based, knows that I want to support plant-based diets, that I want to help their patients become plant-based. So just keep talking about it, because you never know, someone who might be able to have sway in a room that you're not in, or can give you an idea, even if they can't do it. There's been so many people who I didn't even think could possibly do anything to advance the program, but I'm just so excited about it, talking about it all the time, that they ended up being able to give me their feedback or connect me to another person. So just always be networking. I know these are all so generic, but it works. Always be networking.
Yes, but I think we need reminders sometimes. And then also, I think a lot of people struggle with how much should they talk about it in their job? How much should they talk about it when they're talking to people? Because they don't want to become like the plant-based police. They don't want to feel like sometimes they get labeled as like, Here's Stephanie showing up with her plant-based stuff again. You know, that thing I think sometimes people get concerned about. So I love that you are showing that it's important to speak, to talk about it, to not hide that, because if you want people to be aware of it and you want people to go on the journey, they have to be aware that you're an advocate for plant-based lifestyles.
It doesn't work if you can't be planning to be the leader of, the representative of this program, but also be very covertly plant-based and covertly, you want to be aligned how people see you and the position that you get, because then it's just a big question mark. If I approached my CMO and told them I wanted to start a nutrition program and I'd never ever talked about how important nutrition was to me, that would be a much harder conversation. I would have to spend a year telling him my qualifications of why, because again, we don't get nutrition education in school. So yeah, I never was questioned about my qualifications, and I don't have to prove anything because I've been talking about it forever. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So I think this is such a great example of how to not only bring it into your workplace, how to talk about it, how to get people excited about it. And like you said, it's not always the things that sound like, oh my goodness, this is a brand new idea, rip the plastic off of it. No one's ever thought of this before. It's the idea that sometimes we have to do these things and do them consistently. We have to do these things and make sure that people can count on us. Because I love that you said, I picked a time and date for my cooking classes and I did them every single week at the same time. Because I really do believe in that. When you mix up times, when you move things around, it's hard for people to be consistent. And it's hard for people to almost make time in their schedule for what you're doing if it moves around too much.
Right.
So I really think a lot of this is just consistency in messaging, consistency in delivering the service, and being resilient in making sure that, sometimes things you're not able to pull it off the first time you launch something. Sometimes it takes a little bit of maneuver, takes some text messaging, it takes some aggressive text messaging to help you get where you need to go. And I really am excited to let people hear the story, hear not just the great work that you're doing, but also hear about your success, because not only is it success in getting the message out, but it's also success in helping people.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'm so glad we had a chance. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this live and offer it to everyone. And just in case, if someone wants to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, do you want to give them, I don't know if you have any contact information or social media accounts that they should be following?
Yeah, so I do have a social media account because I also do, I work with private clients specifically to do plant-based weight loss, since that tends to help with all the things: diabetes, hypertension, arthritis, cancer prevention. So it's pretty easy. It's just, my handle is Nurse Eugenia, and my name is Eugenia. So Nurse Eugenia, and you'll find me on Instagram, and my website's on there too. But I post tips on how to lose weight from a plant-based diet. And then you can always contact me if you have questions about starting your own program. I love to help anyone, anywhere in the world, to start a similar program.
Perfect. Well, thanks again. Everyone, please make sure you reach out to Eugenia. Not only are we proud of you as far as a leader in our community, helping make this movement move forward, but also, it's great for anyone who needs some tips and advice. Even us vegans at times need some help, because it's easy for us to pick up some bad habits or carry our bad habits over into our new vegan lifestyle. So it's great to know that we have someone like yourself who's a nurse who can give us that perspective and also has the experience with offering these classes and helping others. So thank you again for being here. I really appreciate your time. And thank you everyone who has watched this, whether you watch this live or a replay, or you're listening to this on our podcast. We really appreciate it. We love to hear your comments. We love your thumbs up and loves and likes. So feel free to do that on these posts, nudge, nudge. And I look forward to seeing you in our next interview. Bye, everyone.